Hey, hello, Facebook. How we doing? Anybody else like me tired of the rain? Um, Tired of nonstop rain. Don't know how much more the yard can take. Don't know how much more the golf course can take. Um, I guess prayers need to go out to southeastern Indiana and around Cincinnati, Kentucky, and all that area, considering they got it way worse than what we got. But hey, it is a Friday, and we are that much closer to the best time of the year. Welcome in. Like I said, it is Friday evening, August 14th, year of our Lord 2026. Week two of the 2026 Big Ten preview is coming right away. This week we will be tackling teams 7 through 12. Sorry, learn how to talk. That will be Penn State, Nebraska, Washington, Minnesota, UCLA, and coming first will be Illinois. But first, I wanted to talk about two different things. The blue chip ratio. Going to be previewing that live here. It's something that Bud Elliott of 247 Sports and the Cover 3 podcast, if you don't know, very good podcast. A lot of inside information about college football, how it operates, best teams, stuff like that. They do a lot. They do a gambling segment every Thursday during the season. So a lot of inside information there for those who want to know and do a little make some money there on the side. He came up with this metric a few years back. Basically, it is taking a team's roster, breaking it down to the 4 and 5 stars. In other words, old school recruiting blue chips, if you remember those days. If you can remember what college football used to be when watching those 4 and 5 stars and seeing them and high school level and watching the recruiting rankings and all of that and seeing, hey, my school's got this guy coming in. My school's got that school. Darn it, the rivals got that one. And seeing how they develop and everything else like that. And typically that's what led to your first and second rounders of the NFL draft. So that's why he did that. Um, and so I took that and did some math for each roster of the Big Ten, and this is the results. Not going to lie, some of this was rather surprising. First thing I noticed right off the bat was there is still quite the gap from what I consider the top two to the rest of this conference. And I figured USC would have been matriculating closer up to the top two than what they truly are. There's some teams I thought would have been closer to the top two as well. Your defending national champion being one of them. They it just goes to the show how what the coaching staff does for that program. It has nothing to do with the pure talent on the roster. Yes, they needed talent last year, and yes, they have talent this year, but it's not about that raw talent of first and second rounders, 4 and 5 stars. It's the depth of the roster and the depth of the coaching that they're receiving. Um, for instance, number one, probably by a little bit of surprise, is your Oregon Ducks at 53% blue chip ratio, meaning of the blue chips on their 4 and 5 stars, 53% of that roster is 4 and 5 star recruits. Number two is Ohio State at 52%. Coming at number three is 40%. So right there from the start, you got a 13% drop off between 1 and 3, and a 12% drop off between 2 and 3. Then it gets even more steeper when you get to number four, Michigan, 36%. That's actually not too shocking to me. Paying attention to Michigan's roster, they operate anywhere between 35 to 42%, 45% on great years. Very rarely are they ever in the 50% range. Washington is at number five at 27%. Penn State, even with all the recruits coming in and everybody wanted to talk about how Matt Campbell didn't recruit, they're still at 23%. Number seven is Wisconsin at 20%. Eight, Nebraska at 19%. So just think about that. I'm not even out of the top 10 yet, and we're below 20%. And we want to talk about the talent, and we want to talk about how talent has evenly been distributed amongst the conferences and everything like that. And this is showing something completely different. I would say at the number 8 spot in the SEC, their blue chip ratio is not at 19%. So that's that you can have two different conversations at the same time, and we haven't had that yet. That's probably coming here in 2 weeks. But best conference and second best conference in college football right now. Number 9, UCLA at 18%, Iowa at 14%, Minnesota at 14%, and there's your national champion, number 12, Indiana at 13%. Sorry about that. 11%, Maryland. And rounding out under 10%, your bottom 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 teams are under 10% blue chip ratio. Northwestern, Purdue, Rutgers, Illinois, Michigan State. So it just goes to show that what's going on here within this conference is the rich are getting richer, and they're able to pay for more of those. And it's funny I bring that up because the second thing I want to talk about is the Four-Letter Network came out with an article about NIL and how much roster costs these days in college football. Max Colson, excellent writer, wrote an article on August 11th, if you'd want to go back and read it. It is a very interesting read, quite a long read, but it is an interesting one. So a few days ago, titled College Football, How Much Does Each Position Cost? Apparently, last year he wrote an article that I missed and a whole lot of people missed about the same subject, so there was a reference point a year later. He asked as many as the same scouts, GMs, and coaches as he could to see how much the price for a roster rose in 1 year. The answers are jarring, to say the least. If every Power 4 program was abiding by the new cap, this would be an easy exercise. But that isn't the case. The sport's biggest programs have the biggest donors, so they have been spending more than the $20 million cap. Shocker? Not by me. This panel says the gap has never been bigger between good and elite programs. Panel also says the Big Ten and SEC continue to outspend the ACC and Big 12 by a margin of 2 to 3 to 1. So we want to sit there and talk about how it's the Power 4 versus the rest of college football. At a load of 2 to 3 to 1, that we got the Big 2 in the rest of college football. The ACC and the Big 12 are being left behind, just like everybody else. They were clear to say these ranges for the positions do not include every player and what they make. There are plenty of elite outliers at college football playoff contenders with seven-figure deals this season. There are plenty more competing for a starting job in preseason camp while making $200,000 or less. GMs still believe they're getting a discount when they re-sign starters. So these price ranges tend to reflect the contractual cost of talent acquisition more than retention. The elimination of the spring transfer portal resulted in fewer transfers, but it also created a new level of urgency for roster construction in December and the frantic 2-week portal window in January, right in the middle of the playoffs. This has to be fixed. We've talked about this before. The schedule is one of the major problems, in my opinion, it's the most major problem facing college football right now is this schedule. Just think about it for a minute. Your favorite team and your favorite head coach and their coaching staff right in the middle preparing for the biggest games of the year, they're having to get the roster together for the next season. Worrying about this roster and who's leaving this roster and where they're going, while all at the same time trying to get new players to fill in for next season. And all the while still trying to coach and win the college football playoff, the biggest prize in college football. The whole thing just doesn't make sense to me. And the sooner that this gets fixed, I think some of the other things can just fall in line at that point, and they'll just actually fix themselves. But until it happens, we're just going to keep dealing and going round and round and round. One agent said, people ask me all the time why the market's so high. The market's so high because you've got one shot at this. When the portal's over, that's your team. Further pointing out the problem with trying to build your team during the postseason. College GMs are debating positional roster value every day while navigating a marketplace with no transparency and lots of skepticism about the numbers that get reported. Their head coaches are increasingly concerned about, there are head coaches that are increasingly concerned about where this is all heading. I can tell you right now, with NIL rising 20, 30, 40% a year, it's not sustainable. If we stay on that path, we're on right now. Michigan coach Kyle Whittingham said, as GMs and agents gather more data and experience with every deal, both sides agree business is booming like never before. But they're still seeing too much misinformation on social media about who's making what. You hear and read so much about everyone having $40 million rosters, and every tackle is making $2 million, every corner is making 1.1, and every edge rusher is making 1.5, an ACC GM said. That's just not reality. Here's what they believe college football players are now earning to start and compete at the Power 4 level entering year 2 of the revenue share era. Quarterbacks typically range from $1 to $3 million. They're expecting the average deal for Power 4 starters to exceed $2 million this year. Not all these quarterbacks are millionaires, to be clear. There are still a few Power 4 programs with unresolved quarterback competitions between two passers on six-figure deals. This quote, if you've got a $1 million starting quarterback, they're probably an inexperienced guy at this juncture, a Big 12 GM said. But even the inexperienced guys cashed in this offseason with career backups Kienholz and Michi earning in the $2.5 million to $3 million range as they move into starting roles. It's important to note with all these positions, we're talking about the all-in number for a player's value, not just what they'll earn in revenue sharing. Many still downplay how much they spent by citing a player's guaranteed money or the cap number, but they're funding these deals with a blend of revenue share and third-party money from multimedia rights, or MMRs, as they're obviously quite often referred to, and apparel partners. The schools are getting really creative on the MMR money, an agent said. So $3 million can turn into $6 million very quickly. These front office staffers are bracing for their next round of contract renegotiations at the end of the year. One staffer at a college football playoff contender has scouted dozens of potential transfer players for next January. He is already anticipating deals for the best available passers to hit about $6 million. The limit doesn't exist at the top end, one agent said. How is this getting sustained? How is it getting funded? How's it getting, where's the money coming from? Yes, I get it on the one hand, it's coming from donors and stuff like that, but where's it going to continue coming from? Not everybody has an endless amount of money, and most people don't. So we're talking $6 million for quarterbacks by next season just to be a starting quarterback in the Power 4? It's unsustainable. If a team really wants someone and they feel like that's the player who's going to take them into the college football playoff, they just find a way. Running backs, typical range, 300,000 to 800,000. There are certainly more million-dollar backs this season across college football. One ACC GM said, if you want elite, then elite you will get by going to paying 750,000 to 1 million. But the pay range for running backs is largely tied to offensive philosophy, and there are still lots of teams that would rather move forward with a starting running back making less, more in the $500,000 range, and their number two around $300,000. The panel said this position did not change much. Multiple Big Ten staffers believe the top of the market is between $1 and $2 million. The number is getting higher than people want to pay for truly elite guys, an SEC GM said. Wide receivers typical range 400,000 to 1 million. This is one position that has created the most intrigue, especially considering how many superstars are returning. Jeremiah Smith has said he was offered $10 million to transfer from Ohio State at the end of the last season. General managers surveyed by the Four Letter Network said they could easily see Smith earning $5 million to $6 million this year, plus millions more in other NIL endorsements. $10 million for a wide receiver, and we wonder why these kids aren't leaving to go to college? To go to the NFL? $10 million? What are we doing? One agent said Smith, Cam Coleman, Malachi Tony are the outliers. Whatever the F they want, you pay them. No, there's no cap or sanctions on how much. They have the $20 million cap, but nobody knows what that $20 million cap does. And nobody knows. There's supposedly sanctions for it, but nobody knows what it is. And that goes back to the point earlier where at the beginning of the article that the writer wrote, if everybody was going, where is it at? I wrote it in here. If every Power Four program was abiding by the new cap, this would be an easy exercise. But that's not the case, and we all know it. This is the issue. Like it doesn't make it. How is this sustainable? I know you got in late, so that's why I went back and reread that, Ian. Thank you for joining, by the way. But $10 million for a wide receiver? One agent said Smith, Cam Coleman, Malachi Tony are the outliers. Whatever the F they want, you pay them. Even if you find good value at this position, it won't last long. One GM at a Big 12 school is set to pay his number one receiver $500,000. He knows if that player puts up good stats, that price is going up to $750,000 or $800,000 next year, and even more if he hits the portal. Tight ends typical range $300,000 to $600,000. It's hard, man. An SEC GM said it's a weird market because there's not very many of them. We want to just pay one and pay a premium price because they're so developmental. A few agents also said they got younger backup deals for $400,000, but the price for a second tight end was typically closer to $250,000. But add that in with the rest of it. It's not sustainable at all. Eventually, man, we're going to be in trouble as fans of the game. 100%. Because this whole thing is being ran by people who aren't fans and don't care about the fans of the sport. And this is the problem that some people just can't see. They keep seeing the TV markets and they keep seeing the playoff ratings and they keep seeing all the people in the stands and they keep saying this and yada, yada, yada. Well, the sport's dying within. And people aren't going to notice it until all of a sudden they look up and they're like, where did everything go? And that's literally what's going to happen. And the rise of flag football is only making this thing go faster and faster and faster. And people want to say I'm wrong on that too. Within 10 years, it wouldn't be surprising to me to be watching football as flag football. You already had, in a local area around here, you already had 2 youth organizations disband because they couldn't pay the insurance. You guys do the math. Offensive line typical range, $400,000 to $1.2 million. Yes, it's broken down by tackles and interior linemen. Obviously, tackles on more of the higher end. The paydays for big men are getting bigger every single year. If you were a Power 4 program determined to re-sign your top starting tackle, you had to be ready to pay between $1 million and $1.4 million in many cases. On top of the quarterback, on top of the $1 million running back, on top of apparently the $5 million wide receiver. One agent said he was always asking for $1 million. Always asking, not even going to come to the table unless you were bringing $1 million. And that's what one agent said. Several GMs said teams looking at the G6 level for an experienced player get drastic discounts, $800,000 to $900,000. Defensive ends typical range, $500,000 to $1.2 million. Matt Rice coming in. Laughlin High School in northern Cincinnati canceled their football season due to lack of interest, citing players and parents' concerns over injuries. Further proving the point. Further proving the point. And if we think that issue isn't going to keep moving to more high schools, especially in the inner cities, you got another thing coming. And like I said, the rise of flag football, and there's a reason why the NFL is pushing for flag football. There's a reason for it. So the end's coming. A buddy of mine told me this 10 years ago. I didn't want to believe it. I fought and argued it for a couple years, and about 5 years ago, I started seeing the tide run because I saw with me being around youth football, I started seeing what it was costing the place where I was coaching, started seeing what their insurance rates were doing. And in a 3-year span, it not only doubled, it tripled. That is really not sustainable, especially for a youth sports program. So it's just everything's becoming more expensive, and like it's now you're talking about a sport where yes, injuries can happen at the youth level. I can have a conversation with you off the air, but in my opinion, they're less likely to happen but majority of them happen when they hit their head on the back of the field turf. That's a whole different debate. But but as you get older, the inevitability is happening. So it's sad, but I'll continue being here and talking about it until the day comes, but I think it's coming faster than what we want to realize. Defensive ends typical range 500,000 to 1.2 million. As the price for pass rushers keep rising, the front office staffers surveyed by the Four Letter Network said they'd love to know how much this year's preseason All-Americans are set to earn. One Big Ten staffer said, "I can't imagine what Stewart and Simmons are making. For a Dylan Stewart, the limit does not exist," an agent added. The Texas and South Carolina superstars did not enter the portal and certainly didn't need to in order to earn top dollar at this position. Teams knew if they wanted to compete for experienced transfers, the price was typically starting no lower than $900,000. One Big Ten GM who succeeded in retaining his top pass rusher for $750,000 knew just how costly it would be to get a replacement. In the portal, the ceiling is closer to $1.5 million, he said. Programs that lack the resources to chase seven-figure pass rushers are still finding they can get good talent for around $500,000 to $600,000. And some prefer a more rotational approach for paying 3 or 4 players in that range anyways. There can be a wide range of options at this position in terms of size, scheme fit, role, and experience. But as the case with offensive tackles, GM saw a big jump in price for top high school edge talent this summer. So we're getting it on the one end from the players wanting to, when they're entering the portal, once they're in college, they're hitting the teams and the universities on that end. But now we got the high school kids wanting to come in on their greedy side of it too. And see, this goes to the bigger issue. Like I was always for the NIL part of it, where I thought kids were going to be going to get car deals and stuff like that, and make money off of camps and stuff, and make money off of that, make money literally off the NIL part of it. I never once foresaw a deal. I never once foresaw the day where we were literally going to be talking about NFL contracts without the contract at the college football level. I didn't foresee that. And what I didn't foresee was the TV networks coming in and greedily taking over this sport, because they didn't ruin the NFL. Well, they hadn't ruined the NFL quite yet. And they said, well, we need more of that, instead of looking at college football saying it's different and it's great because it's different. They said we need more of the NFL. And that's what they've done to college football. And it just saddens me the more and more that this goes on. Let's see here. There can be a wide range of options at this position. Blah, blah, already read that. They've heard rumors of 2-year deals for top 100 recruits in the 2027 class starting at $1 million to $1.5 million per year. We'd be lucky to get one for $500,000, an SEC GM said. Defensive tackle typical range, $500,000 to $1 million. Think about NFL salaries and what each position gets paid. And what NFL franchise pays more to a defensive tackle than a defensive end? Name one. Think I'm joking? Look at what Myles Garrett just got traded for, and look what Lawrence got signed for with the Cincinnati Bengals. And what world is a defensive tackle worth more than a defensive end? Apparently in college football. For general managers with major defensive tackle needs, this year's portal market was confounding. One agent described it as astronomical after seeing one of his clients receive multiple offers for $1.3 million and more. If you didn't get deals done early in the portal window, you were quickly in trouble. The market for them was as strong as the edge, a Big Ten GM said. Guys kept entering the portal later in the cycle, and the market never fell out. As more guys went in, they kept getting more money. It was absolutely insane. Teams knew it would take $1 million or more to get in the mix for coveted transfers with NFL potential, but didn't anticipate quite so many portal recruitments would cross seven figures. After this offseason cycle, one GM argued that the price range for an SEC caliber starter now seems to be $600,000 to $1.5 million. Big 12 GM said, I mean, that's the most egregious position. They can be really average and get paid a lot of money. It's just a function of supply and demand. With edges, there are supply impactful ones, and there are others who can do the job. Even the ones that can do the job are still better than some of these defensive tackles. Linebackers typical range 300 to 700,000. Linebackers are still perceived to be the most affordable starters on the defense among GMs and agents. To me, if you're in the 700,000s, you're paying a guy who's done it and started a ton of games, an SEC GM said. Several front office staffers agreed with the sentiment and said they still think they can find quality starters for half that price, especially in the ACC and Big 12. I'd say that's probably the cheapest position on defense by a decent amount, one agent said. If you're getting paid $500,000 at linebacker, you're not average. The secondary is broken into both positions. Defensive back range 400,000 to 900, safeties range 300,000 to 900,000. The NFL's highest paid cornerbacks are now making over $30 million per year, and its top safeties are $25 million. At the highest levels of college football, though, the gap between these two positions isn't quite so dramatic. If the best corners in the country are earning a little over $1 million this season, the top safeties aren't far behind. In fact, some GMs and agents believe there's enough scarcity at the safety position that they're now able to make just as much as the corners. Corner is interesting to me, a Big Ten GM said. There's so many of them that I feel like the market gets tampered down at the college level. Some Big Ten and SEC staffers see the bottom range for a starting corner being closer to $500,000. After struggling to find good options for less than $400,000 in the portal window, the teams that re-signed starters for less than $600,000 got good value this offseason. Corner was huge last year, an agent said. Safety was on top this year. I think it kind of flipped. Olsen admitted he mistakenly omitted the specialist from last year's position value survey, but he said that was fixed for next year. He did get some good quotes. Several Power 4 GMs told the four-letter network they have no problem paying $100,000 for their starting place kicker. Six figures to kick a football. And one staffer at a CFP contender said a great one in the transfer portal could be worth as much as $300,000 this year. One intriguing factor behind place kicker pay, multiple GMs told the four-letter network that top kickers have worked together to raise their market by sharing with each other how much they're being paid and offered. All the kicker guys chat and jack the price up, one SEC GM said. GMs said they're fine with paying in the $100,000 to $150,000 range for a good punter and up to $50,000 for a long snapper. There are still Power 4 programs that bring in their specialists on scholarship only and don't start paying them revenue share until they become a contributor. So the true low end of pay this year is still probably closer to zero. If you're genuinely trying to follow a budget, the SEC GM argued there's no way you're dropping $300,000 on a kicker. But similar to all other positions, there's nothing stopping well-funded programs with title ambitions from writing big checks to all-conference caliber specialists. One Big Ten staffer who paid $125,000 for his kicker last season said that's the cost of doing business at the highest level. He can justify six figures for kickers and perhaps punters. If we're even paying big bucks to a long snapper, get me out of the if we ever start paying big bucks to a long snapper, get me out of this industry, he said. So that's the breakdown of each position. My takeaway is this. I agree with Kyle Whittingham. This is not sustainable. Where is all of this money coming from, and how does it continue to come? What I would love to know is what you guys think about this. This was eye-opening to me, to be perfectly honest to you. In a lot of cases, it's actually less than I thought, but I still don't see how it's sustainable. What I should have done was go through and add up like at the base minimum of what each position is and where that is towards the cap. And what I should have done was where the high end was, and see how far over that cap would have been. But there's just no way that this is sustainable. And there's no way that anybody with a right mind can look at it and say anything otherwise. But before anybody loses their bleep, I'm going to move on and let's do some breakdowns, shall we? Like I said, moving into the middle part of the Big Ten this week, Illinois threw on. So number 12, Illinois, they went 9-4 last year, scoring 29.4 points per game and gaining 373.8 yards per game. The Illini defense last year allowed 23.6 points per game and 345.1 yards per game. Illinois' unit rankings: coaching staff 7, depth of roster 15, offense 12, defense 12, defensive end 16, defense 16, quarterback 11, running back 14, wide receiver, tight end 7, offensive line 15, defensive line 14, linebacker 17, secondary 13, and their specialists 17. Best case, worst case, 10-2 and a trip to the college football playoff. Worst case, struggle to get to 6 wins. I think it lies somewhere in the middle. I don't see this as a college football playoff contender or even possible trip. They lost way too much, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Key stats from 2025. Number 1, fumbles. Opponents 17, they lost 10 of them. Illinois 10, they lost 5 of them. Number 2, led the Big Ten in fewest interceptions, 6. And number 3, next to last in the Big Ten in third down stops, 45%. Biggest game, Oregon, October 3rd. The Illini have a great shot to be 5-1 with a likely blowout loss at Ohio State. And there's a week off to get ready for Oregon. Last year, the big home stunner was a thriller over USC, beat the Ducks, and the excitement goes through the roof over a manageable final 5 games. Illinois has back-to-back 9-win seasons. Can Brett Bielema make it 3 straight and finally take the next step in the Big Ten? Illinois has been close to really big things under Brett Bielema. It's been a great 2-year run, going 19-7 after starting 18-19 over the first 3 years under Brett. And it's hard to argue with the success. Illinois had back-to-back seasons of 9 wins or more for the first time in its 134 years of playing football. And if it wins 8 or more this year, it can claim to be among the best eras in school history, at least matching the stretch from 1903 to 1905. But this will be one of Bielema's most interesting and hardest coaching seasons in his 18 years at 3 different stops. The team is good, but it won't be the force the last year's squad was supposed to be. That's not supposed to matter. It's the transfer portal era. Illinois did okay for itself, and the program's place in the upper middle tier of the new and improved Big Ten needs to be solidified. The Illini didn't necessarily have the most explosive of attacks, but they won when they racked up yards, lost when they didn't, and did the right things by not losing the ball and keeping the chains moving. It's about the system now as much as the talent. It's more about being methodical than sensational, but it works. The transfer portal helped. There's a good base in place, and expect more of the same. What's working? Run the ball, and good things happen. The ground attack hasn't been as nasty as you'd think over the last 2 seasons. It averaged just 138 yards per game. Lost my place last year, but forget beating the Illini when there was the bare minimum of production running the ball. The Illini went 9-1 when rushing for more than 50 yards. 0-3 when they didn't. They have to commit to pounding it, but it'll help to have all of the top runners being back. There's talent, but the backs need more room to move. Khalil Valentine fits the attack, rushing for 614 yards and 4 scores. Caden Fagan is a 260-pound tight end, but he's a powerhouse on short runs. He led the team with 7 touchdowns last year. And Aiden Legge is a quick veteran in the rotation. The interior of the line will take over. Guards Brandon Henderson and Brandon Hanson know what they're doing, and bringing in center Jake Rufino from Wisconsin is a big deal. Throw in Colorado State transfer Christian Martin for one of the tackle jobs, and there's a lot to like up front. What needs work? The pass protection has to be better. The offensive line might need a bit of an overhaul, but that's not the worst thing in the world considering last year's group had a problem keeping Altmaier from getting popped. Now the Illini have to be stronger overall with 4 new starters up front. A number 1 wide receiver needs to emerge. Hank Beatty led the team with 70 catches at the team's top go-to target. Now he's a Tennessee Titan. Colin Dixon and Hudson Clement are back after combining for 71 grabs, but who's the alpha? Consistency. The team bottomed out the 3 times when the offense wasn't able to at least get to 20 points. Getting stuffed by Indiana and Ohio State was forgivable, but the brain cramp against Wisconsin was very costly. Defensively, the Illini lost a lot between the portal, NFL, and seniors. A lot of production needs to be replaced. Last year, the defense wasn't that great, and it should have been better. It was too experienced with too many good parts to have so many issues, like struggling on third downs and allowing too many completed passes. In comes Bobby Hauck, a fantastic head coach at Montana over 2 different stints. His Grizzlies lost the 2023 FCS National Championship and ended up number 3 last year. Who takes over as the new defensive? He takes over as the new defensive coordinator. He has some rebuilding to do, so what's working? It wasn't a high bar, but Illinois won when the pass defense was merely decent. The secondary had its moments. It destroyed eventual ACC champion Duke with 5 interceptions, and the team went 8, keeping passing games from completing 70% of their throws. Great things happen when the defense forces mistakes. The margin for error with the Illini was thin over the last 2 years, but it was there going 8-0 in 1-score games. It was a different team when the D came up. The team was 15-1 over the last 2 seasons when forcing at least 1 interception. The transfer portal did a great job for the defensive front. Pat Farrell is back on one end after working as a decent part of rotation and 4 good transfers, especially Jacksonville State defensive tackle Daryl Prater. He's just the sort of active interior presence who fits the Illini style. This bunch had better rock because, yes, the Illini did a great job in the portal for the line, but they lost some big-time talent. Star pass rusher Gabe Jacobs will be fantastic for the New England Patriots, and losing Tomoa Duave to South Carolina and Angel McCollum to Texas A&M was a huge hit. The defense has to be far better on third downs. For all the talent up front, and even with a slew of playmakers across the board, the Illini had a hard time getting off the field. It was among the worst defenses in the Big Ten at generating third down stops, allowing teams to hit 45% of their attempts. Indiana and Washington rolled at will. The number 2 cornerback job has to be figured out fast. Jaheim Juice Clark is a broken up pass machine on one side of the field, but the rest of the cornerback situation is a huge concern. Georgia State transfer Deuce Fillmore will get the first look, and JUCO transfer Jaquan Morris and freshman Nick Hankins will be a part of the rotation. So keys to the season. Last year's Illini team was loaded with veterans, talent, and upside, and while going 9-4 was good, there were real college football playoff dreams. The biggest key is to somehow do even more with far less experience, sure thing talent, and expectations. This is still a strong bunch with a loaded group of transfers helping the depth, but the season depends on untested players rising up and rocking right away. The biggest concern for the Illini, all of the new starters. It's an interesting situation with good depth just about everywhere, but without a sure thing starting 22 to build on in fall camp. Close to 10 transfers are expected to run onto the field as starters against UAB on September 5th. And there's no grace period. Illinois is supposed to build on the last 2 seasons and be even better. There are too many unknowns to assume that's happening. The season prediction. No, Illinois won't come up with a season with 9 or more wins for the 3rd straight season, but this will be another fun run. Like last year, there will be an upset somewhere that gives everyone hope for something special. A soul-clipping loss that ruins that, and one total wipeout when Bielema's bunch looks totally outclassed. But there will be a 3rd straight bowl appearance for the first time since the Illini played in 5 in a row from 1988 to 1992. The schedule isn't all that bad with 4 of the first 5 games at home and just 2 road games before Halloween. Michigan State, UCLA, and Maryland didn't go bowling last year, and those 3 are part of the 5 road games. Northwestern is another. Forget about beating Ohio State and Columbus, and Oregon and Iowa at home will be tough. But there's no Indiana, Michigan, Penn State, USC, or Washington to deal with. No, this isn't when the Illini take that next step up, but it will be when Bielema solidifies the program as his. I have Illinois going 8-4. The over/under is 6.5. That's another over. Means we could have some surprise unders coming up. We shall see. Number 11, UCLA went 3-9 and fired their head coach midseason. This season, the Bruins hired Bob Chesney. His previous job was at James Madison after Cignetti left for Indiana. Chesney went 21-6 while at James Madison, including a CFP appearance last year. The Bruins are very excited about this guy, and as am I. He has said all the right things leading up to the season. Time will tell if it all can come together year one, or if it takes a couple to build it. I definitely am rooting for this guy. He seems to have it all together. I mean, he just really does. Everything he said at Big Ten Media Days was right on point, and seems to have it way more together than the last head coach. College football is way better when the Bruins are good. The Bruins offense last year scored 18.2 points per game and gained 319.9 yards per game. The Bruins defense gave up 33.4 points per game and allowed 387 yards per game. The Bruins unit rankings: coaching staff 17th, depth of roster 10, offense 8, defense 10, quarterback 4, running back 11, wide receiver tight end 9, offensive line 11, defensive line 12, linebacker 13, secondary 10th, special teams 3rd. Best case, worst case. Best case, get to a bowl game. Worst case, a 3rd straight losing season. Key stats from 2025. 1, first quarter scoring. Opponents 88, UCLA 20. 2, sacks. Opponents 27 for 159 yards, UCLA 10 for 79. 3, rushing touchdowns. Opponents 26, UCLA 8. Biggest game at Cal, September 5th. It's a huge moment for the start of the Bob Chesney era. No one's expecting miracles, and it'll be a fight just to get to be bowl eligible, considering the Big Ten schedule. But winning in Berkeley against a jacked-up Cal, who's starting out its own new coaching staff era, would instantly show that UCLA is poised to be a problem. So, seriously, how do you not see if you can make lightning strike twice? Kirk Cignetti pulled off the greatest turnaround job in the history of college football and maybe American sports. Coach Google Me won everywhere he coached, did wonderful things at James Madison, left for Indiana, brought a slew of the best players with him to build on an already great base, and boom, you have a national champion. New UCLA head coach Bob Chesney wins too. He won at Salve Regina. It's gorgeous little school in Rhode Island. He won at Assumption, another beautiful private Catholic school, but in Massachusetts. He won big at Holy Cross, took James Madison to the college football playoff in his second season with the Dukes, and in his 16 years as head coach, has just one losing season, 5-6 in his first year at Holy Cross. UCLA had 9 losing seasons in the last 16 years. And it's coming off one of the worst campaigns in program history. And like Cignetti did, Chesney is bringing in a slew of good players from James Madison, productive veterans who know how to win, coming into a place that went 8-16 in its first 2 seasons in the Big Ten. No, there will never be another Cignetti or another Indiana, but woe to all those who passed on Chesney if he comes close. Offense: Minnesota and Wisconsin had worse offenses than UCLA. That's it. That's the list. That's putting a nice spin on the problems of last year. Bad rushing attack, worse passing offense, no scoring. UCLA managed more than 21 points just 3 times and came up with more than 14 points in 5 games. Let's see here. Put that there. Let's see. I think UCLA nailed it with the hire. If given the time, he can make something out of what the program has crumbled to be. Definitely. There's definitely more coming to that to prove that point even more. I'm very high on them. Yes, I know I only have them at 11, but they're like, You got to remember where they're at and what they have on the roster and who else is in front of them. That's the thing. Like, as soon as you get high on one team, you start looking at the rest of this conference, and you start looking at other teams you immediately start falling in love with. So, unfortunately, somebody's got to be losing some games, and that's the joys of winning and losing. And I know is the nature of the beast. And all the 218 points scored were the fewest since the 212 the 2008 Bruin team put up. Things are about to change in a big way. What's working? Here comes the help to make the offense go. Offensive coordinator Dean Kennedy made the move to UCLA after spending the last 2 years under Chesney at James Madison. His attack finished 15th in the nation in yards, 9th in scoring, and he's not alone. The James Madison talents coming over are about to help in a big way. Start with running back Wayne Knight, a tremendous back who ran for close to 1,400 yards and 9 touchdowns and caught 40 passes. He's the back that offense desperately needed last year. All Sun Belt blockers Riley Robel at center and guard Carter Sweezy, all Sun Belt wide receiver Landon Ellis, tight end Josh Pfeiffer. The new guys coming from Harrisburg to Los Angeles are ready to go to work. The Bruins kept their quarterback for all of the dodging of Nico for leaving Tennessee for UCLA. He did what he could for an offense that didn't have much else to work with last year. Now he has the supporting cast to turn it loose and show off all he can do. For those of you that need to remember, he is a 5-star. And towards the end of last year, he was starting to turn it on. And he's got 2 wide receivers, and like I just said, he's got a running back. What needs work? The receiving core is a bit of a question mark. Last year's bunch didn't do much, but it still hurts to lose leading target Quasi Gilmer and in all 4 of the top 5 non-running back pass catchers. It's all on the transfers to fix the problems. Will the downfield passing game be there? UCLA is going from getting nothing whatsoever down the field to needing to force the big plays. The hope is for all the new guys to stretch the field more, and the James Madison air attack cranked up the deep shots. But after completing fewer than 10 yards per completion, this isn't a given. Get the ground game going. To do that, the offensive line needs the 4 starting transfers to be great wide away. And the rest of the big transfers have to bring the depth, the line that didn't have last year. The Bruins were 3-0 when running for more than 175 yards and 0-9 when coming up with fewer. James Madison averaged 245.5 rushing yards per game. Defensively, it worked at James Madison, so why not keep it all rolling? Former Duke's defensive coordinator Colin Hitchler takes over the same role with the Bruins. His JMU defense finished 5th in the nation in total defense, was 13th in scoring defense, and was a rock against the run, finishing 5th, allowing just 85 yards per game. It'll be a heavy lift, but all of the new transfers will make a night and day difference. What's working? The defensive line just got a desperately needed overhaul. After finishing dead last in the nation with just 10 sacks, in comes the James Madison in combination of Sahir West and Aiden Gobrera. Those 2 combined for 12 sacks, and Cal transfer Ryan McCullough is a nice option for that rotation. The linebacking core got an upgrade as well. The combination of John Vaughns and Isaiah Chisholm made plenty of tackles, but not enough. In steps learn how to read. Sammy Omusaga from Oklahoma, a 6'2", 239-pound veteran, potential tackling machine who will also get into the backfield. Jalen Woods is a holdover who should be fine, and James Madison's Drew Spignotti needs to spot somewhere after being a dangerous pass rusher along with 51 tackles last season. The Bruins are loaded with experienced players in the secondary. Last year's bunch didn't get any help from the pass rush, and that's about to change. DJ Barksdale was a versatile all-Sun Belt playmaker for James Madison. Bruin holdovers Roderick Pleasant and Scooter Jackson weren't bad at corner either. Safety Cole Martin made 65 tackles with 3 broken up passes. Throw in Tay Johnson into the starting mix, and he made 50 tackles with 2 picks last year at Utah. And that's a guy that Michigan wanted, and Michigan wanted deeply. And the secondary should be a steady piece for the defense. What needs work? The pass rush has to prove itself all over again. Not to freak out over the pass, but the pass rush was so abysmal last year that that'll look strange when someone in a fabulous blue uniform is behind the line of scrimmage. How bad was it? UCLA went all of October and most of November, making just 4 sacks in 7 games. The defensive tackle situation is the known unknown. The defense should be better in all phases, but tackle is the one area without any real experience. There are nice prospects. Ohio State's Maxwell Roy is all upside, and Cal's Tyson Ford has seen limited action, but holdover A.J. Furumono is one of the few tackles with something on the resume, making 14 tackles last season. Third down stops. Shouldn't be a surprise that the defense, with the worst pass rush in the nation, was also dead last in stopping teams on third downs, and by a relative mile. Air Force was the only other team to allow offenses to convert over 50% of their chances, 50.36 to be exact on the year. UCLA allowed teams to keep things moving 54.8% of the time. That wasn't just the worst in college football last year, but it was the worst since ULM allowed teams to convert on 57% of their third down tries in 2020. Keys to the season. Number 1, find consistent offensive explosion with all the new parts. Number 2, start generating pressure in the backfield to take pressure off of everything else. Number 3, score. The Bruins only put up more than 23 points in 2 games last season. Biggest concern, make all the new parts mesh right away. There's talent now, and this is a much better team than last year's version. But there's a good chance at least 15 transfers will start when the season opens up. So the season prediction goes like this. Let's get a bit bullish here. UCLA doesn't have the hardest of Big Ten schedules, and it'll be at least 3 wins better to get to a bowl game. 1, Chesney and his staff should be that good. 2, the talent across the board is better. And 3, the team won't be totally woeful in so many areas like last year. And don't discount the possibility that something clicks right away. Nico shows that he's a special quarterback, and UCLA is a major surprise with a far better season than we're predicting here. The schedule could be worse. At Cal, San Diego State, Purdue, at Maryland, Wisconsin, Michigan State, Nevada, Illinois, at Minnesota. That's not totally awful. If UCLA is any good, it should be able to win at least 5 of those 9 games, if not more. There's no Indiana, Ohio State, Penn State, Iowa, or Washington. USC, at Michigan, and at Oregon are the true lean loss games. And no, we're not getting Kurt Cignetti light and another Indiana here, but UCLA will take a big step toward being a good college football team again. So I have the Bruins going a solid 6-6, but the team will be so much better than that. The over-under is 6.5, so that breaks the string of overs. I have the Bruins going under, unfortunately. Number 10 is next. Minnesota went 8-5 last year. Minnesota has been one of the steadiest winners in the Big Ten under P.J. Fleck. Now, can the Gophers finally take another step in 2026? The Gophers' offense last year scored 23 points per game and gained 293.2 yards per game. Defensively, the Gophers allowed 22.9 points per game and 331.6 yards per game. Best case, worst case. Best case, be in the chase for a playoff spot, and worst case, struggle to get to a bowl game. 2025 key stats. Fumbles. Number 1, fumbles. Opponents 14, lost 7. Minnesota 9, lost 2. Number 2, Minnesota scoring. First quarter 45, second quarter 12. Whew. Wow. 12 all year long. I typed it and didn't believe it then and read it this time and still don't believe it. 3 sacks, Minnesota 39 for 279 yards, opponents 24 for 146 yards. Only team in the Big Ten that returns head coach, both coordinators, and starting quarterback. Minnesota's unit rankings, coaching staff 9, depth of roster 11, offense 10, defense 12, quarterback 13, running back 7, wide receiver, tight end 14, offensive line 10, defensive line 11, linebackers 10, secondary 14, specials 14. Has Minnesota hit a ceiling under P.J. Fleck? The Gophers have been good under Fleck, winning seasons, bowl games, bowl victories, occasional big moments. The program has been steadily solid, and yes, things could be worse. Ask Wisconsin, Nebraska, and Michigan State what it's like to be just blah. But after winning 9 games in both 21 and 22, and in the 10th season under Fleck, it would be nice to have a season where it all comes together. It's too much to ask for Minnesota to pull an Indiana, but it has the makeup and mindset to make a sneaky run and hang around the college football playoff chase well into November. It's an interesting team with a few potential superstar playmakers and a schedule that isn't horrible for anyone in the Big Ten who wants to be playoff worthy. This is Flex Minnesota program. Now it's time to do something special. Minnesota used to be a force running the ball control, grind it out, make teams play at the wrong speed, all of that. The attacking style started to change in 2024. Quarterback Max Brosmer transferred in. He was often one of the best players on the field, and the Gophers started throwing. Now the attack is starting to revolve more and more around the high-powered passers, and the Gophers have one who might just be one of the biggest sleepers in college football. What's working? Drake Lindsey is the Minnesota offense. The 6'5", 230-pounder from Fayetteville, Arkansas, threw it 389 times last season, and when he was on, I say rarely, but when he was on, the team won. Minnesota was 5-0 when he hit at least 65% of his passes. Think about that stat for a minute. 5-0 when hitting at least 65%. That ain't that good. I'm just gonna cut right in front of it right here. Every magazine I read, everything I hear, Drake Lindsey is projected to be a first-round quarterback next year. I don't see it. I don't. I do not see it at all. But time will tell. And now that he has a year under his belt, the mid-range passing game should be even sharper. Lindsey needs receivers to throw it to, and the Gophers got them. Last year's receiving core was okay, but it wasn't explosive enough. In comes Perry Thompson from Auburn and Noah Jennings from Cincinnati to help change that. This will be a deep group, helped even further by the addition of tight end Caden Helms from Oklahoma. The offensive line is loaded with veterans. Tennessee transfer Bennett Warren should take over one of the tackle spots, probably on the right side. Nathan Roy is a rising mainstay at left tackle. Greg Johnson will be the All-Big Ten mix at guard, and Ashton Beers is back after starting every game at center. What needs to work? The offense. The offense. It didn't go anywhere, especially against top defenses. The stats are a tad bit misleading. Minnesota was 129th in the nation in total offense. Yes, the tad bit misleading is a little bit sarcastic. Partly because it got shut down to a dead stop on the road by Ohio State, Oregon, and Iowa. That's only 3 games. You had 9 other games to raise that 129th. The attack has to work against more than just the mediocre. The offensive line is big, and it has to blast away. File the return of top back Darius Taylor under the what's working category, but he needs to stay healthy, and he needs the ball more. The offense will be Lindsey's, but the Gophers were 6-1 last season when rushing for over a mere 70 yards. Time of minutes per game. They were third in the country in 21 and 22, only trailing the military academies. And they were even in the top 20 in 23 and 24 despite throwing the ball more. Last season, for reasons unknown, Minnesota was 86th in the nation in time of possession, keeping the ball for just over 29 minutes a game. On the other side of the ball, the defense gets graded on a curve. It wasn't good by the unrealistic standards of last year's Big Ten, but nationally, it was one of the elite defenses at getting into the backfield and, for the most part, held up well against the run. Like the offensive side, the D got its share of great transfers to go along with the talent already on board. So what's working? Anthony Smith, the 6'6", 285-pound defensive end, will be a first-round NFL draft pick next season. In quotations, caveat. Yesterday, he blew his ACL, and he's out for the season. Nothing that I've read this offseason actually made me crumble more. than when I read that. He was actually a guy on another team that I was going to be looking for to see what he was going to be able to do, because I thought with the schedule that he had, there was enough teams on this schedule where he was going to wreak some havoc. And it was going to be very interesting to see what a kid from Minnesota could do, especially in postseasons awards, All-Americans, and all of that. And it was confirmed later in the afternoon yesterday. It was feared in the morning and then confirmed. He tore his ACL and he's out for the entire season. So he probably won't even be a first-round draft pick next year. Time will tell. There's plenty of time until between now and April, but I could not feel worse for this kid. I just really couldn't, just being brutally honest. Last year, he made 12 and a half sacks with 17 and a half tackles for loss, and now with the spotlight is on him. But yeah, like I said, it's very sad. So that leaves plenty of room for former LSU transfer Jackson Howard, Cal transfer TJ Bush, and veteran Carter Mins to combine to shine on both sides of the ball now. The pass rush will be devastating. Well, it was going to be. Let's hope some of these guys can step up so that maintains. The Gophers are loaded at defensive tackle as well. This might be the strongest area of talent through the portal, landing Zion Chapman from Florida International and Seed Kaba and Naquan Crowder from Marshall to take over. All three of them can move. The back eight is full of experience. Leading tackler Maverick Boronsky is back after leading the way with 109 tackles, and the veteran secondary will clean up everything else. Aiden Galsby is a playmaker no matter where he lines up, and Kerry Brown should be one of the team's all-around statistical stars at one safety spot. Corner John Nestor returns after coming up with Big Ten high 6 picks at one corner. What needs work? Coy Perch is an Oregon Duck now. The Gopher secondary will be terrific, but Parrish was the superstar. He's an almost certain first-round draft pick next year, but he's gone from this safety spot. Difference makers like him are rare. Yeah, the pass rush was great, but the defense couldn't get off the field. For all that talent and all the good things on the Minnesota defense, there were times it couldn't get a third down stop. Ohio State converted 70% of its chances in the 42-3 wipeout. Oregon converted 67% of its tries in the 42-13 win, and somehow Northwestern pulled off the upset partly because the offense kept grinding away. More takeaways would be nice as well. It was a feast or famine. In 13 games, 11 of the 16 Gopher takeaways came in against 3 dud attacks: Northwestern State, Purdue, and Wisconsin. The defense failed to take the ball away 5 times. Keys to the season. For all the hits and misses in the style of play on both sides of the ball, remember, Minnesota did win 8 games. A lot of things worked. Now they have to be done better. Move the chains, control the tempo, run more, convert more drives into scores, and be sharper on third downs. All of this used to be everything under Fleck. If Minnesota can combine all the finer points with the schemes, look out. Biggest concern. Balance out the offense. It'll be tempting to let Lindsey throw and throw and throw some more, but Minnesota is at its best when it's hammering away on defensive fronts. Running back Darius Taylor needs the ball. The season prediction. We live in a world where simply being a very good college football team isn't good enough anymore. If you're not in the college football playoff hunt, you don't really exist and you're not taken seriously. That's not fair. Minnesota has been a very, very good, successful program. It's hard to go 7 for 7 in bowl games like PJ Fleck has. The Gophers have won their last 9 going back to 2015. It was hard to win 8 or more games in 5 of the last 6 full seasons. Minnesota only played 7 games in 2020. Penn State can't claim that. Neither can USC, but it's a new world in the Big Ten now. The powerhouses are even stronger than before, so even though Minnesota did a great job in the transfer portal, and it's a far better team than it was last year, that goes the same for Washington, Penn State, and Wisconsin, and all 3 of those games are on the road. Iowa, Michigan are hardly layups, and then there's that trip to Indiana to worry about. The Gophers do miss Ohio State, Oregon, USC, and Illinois, but that's just not enough. Last year's team beat Buffalo, Northwestern State, Rutgers, Purdue, Michigan State, and Wisconsin. All 6 of those teams finished with losing records, and they beat a blah Nebraska team that went 7-6. Another 7 or 8 win season for Fleck and his bunch against this slate would be just fine. So I do believe this roster is a ton better than the Gophers have been the last few years. The question is, and will be, can they put it all together? And will some of the other teams on this tier not improve as much as figured? That's why I have the Gophers going 7-5, and wouldn't be shocked if it was better. Over under is 6.5, so that's another over. Moving on to the Huskies of Washington. Number 9, Washington went 9-4 last season. Washington has been good since joining the Big Ten, but it has to take things up several notches to be among the league's true players. The Huskies offense scored 34.1 points per game and gained 409.9 yards per game. The defense allowed 18.7 points per game and 311.4 yards per game. Best case, worst case. Best, make the college football playoff again. Worst, struggle to get a decent bowl game. 2025 key stats. Number 1, rushing touchdowns. Washington 30, opponents 9. 2, sacks. Opponents 34 for 235 yards. Washington 24 for 154. And third, fourth quarter scoring. Washington 129, opponents 59. Which tells you they're closing. They're just not doing anything else in the other 3 quarters. The Huskies 2026 unit rankings. Coaching staff 13th. Depth of roster 7th. Offense 7. Defense 6. Quarterback 5th. Running back 13. Wide receiver, tight end 8. Offensive line 7. D-line 10. Linebacker 5. Secondary 6. Special teams 10. Washington has an interesting niche in the college football world. It played in a college football playoff national championship within the last 3 seasons. Alabama didn't, and neither did Georgia, Oregon, or Texas. It won a conference title within the last 3 years, too. Ohio State hasn't done that. But all of that was under another head coach. The moment Kalen DeBoer left for Alabama, Washington was in rebuilding mode, and despite the splashy move to the Big Ten, there was a bit of an out-of-sight, out-of-mind thing happening. Washington is in a huge media market, but it hasn't been on the national radar yet in 2 seasons under Jedd Fisch. It was good last year, but when it had its chances to be great, it wasn't. Indiana took all the oxygen out of the room last year. Oregon has gobbled up what attention there is to major college football in the Pacific Northwest, and Ohio State and Michigan will always be national stars. Now it's time for Washington to make everyone pay attention. Fisch is a terrific head coach who built up Arizona and is doing the same thing with the Huskies. The schedule isn't bad. There's a good starting 22, decent depth, and there's just enough of a chip on the shoulder to make this season that shows everyone that, yeah, this is a power program. There's a whole lot to like about the offense that averaged 410 yards and 34 points per game. The Huskies return a ton of talent. The transfer portal was kind for the most part. Now it'll be about consistency. Just do anything against the great teams on the slate, and it'll be a big season. There's balance, power, and explosion to be even better. Jedd Fisch knows how to crank up his offense. What's working for the offense? Damon Williams is still around. He's only 5'11 and 190 pounds, but the junior quarterback is a big-time passer who can make plays on the move. Yes, he wanted to get out of his NIL deal and go into the market, but he's still around, threw for over 3,000 yards and ran for over 600, and he's the signature star, even if he is a bit of a reluctant one. The offensive line should be a force. It has NFL size across the board, experience, 4 starters are back, and it can bash away at times. Don't let the pass protection stats fool you. A lot of those came from Williams moving around trying to make something happen. Williams can run, but it's the passing game that takes things up a notch. No, it won't be back to the 2023 days when Michael Penix was winging it around in the Kalen DeBoer offense, but Washington was 9-0 when throwing for more than 210 yards. What needs work? The offensive line has to be better. 4 of the starting 5 return, and Colt Dietrich comes in from Sam Houston to be an instant factor at left tackle. Along with freshman Cody Green, now the running game has to be stronger, and even if Williams takes sacks, trying to make things happen, the pass protection could use more. Top back Jonah Coleman is now a part of the Denver Broncos, and second leading back Adam Mohammed left for Cal. It'll be up to Oregon's Jaden Lamar, star freshman recruit Brian Bonner, and backup Jordan Washington to take the rushing pressure off of Williams. Be better against great teams. Washington hit a hard ceiling last year when it was time for the offense to step up against the elite. Forgetting the faceplant 13-10 loss at Wisconsin, the Huskies scored a total of 27 points in losses to Ohio State, Oregon, and Michigan. It scored 38 or more against everyone else but the 24-20 win over Maryland. Defensively, the Huskies went from being just okay in 24 to being a force against the run and 21st in the nation overall in total defense last season. It doesn't have the experience back like the offense enjoys, but there's good size across the board, enough options to be fantastic again. What's working? There are a few key losses, but the linebackers will be solid. Zaire Alexander was second on the team with 70 stops, and he returns as part of a rock-solid core. He'll work on the outside. Jacob Manu is back after missing a bulk of last season. The pass rush wasn't anything special, but the ends returned strong, and the transfer portal helped the line inside and out. The combination of Jacob Lane and Isaiah Ward has the experience to be far better in getting behind the line. The run defense was outstanding, even when the defense wasn't great overall. It held up well against Ohio State and Oregon. No one averaged more than 4.8 yards per carry, and only 4 teams got past 107 yards. That will continue. What needs work? There's a lot of production in the secondary. Ephesians Pryzek, San Francisco 49ers, Takero Davis, Cincinnati Bengals, were NFL caliber corners who will be missed. And safety, Mikael Easton, was fourth on the team with 50 stops. Fortunately, leading tackler Alex McCollum is back at one safety spot. The pass rush has to do something on a more consistent basis and when it's needed the most. Washington came up with 24 on the season, but 19 were against 7 of the worst teams on the slate. The pressure will come from several spots, but it would be nice if someone could blow up and dominate. The defensive tackles are filling in the gaps. Bryce Butler left for Texas Tech, Armand Parker left for Maryland, and starters Ontario Thompson and Taitai don't even want to try it, are done. The Huskies are counting on the transfer portal to help. Keys to the season: get a lot more out of the lines. Washington was among the worst in the Big Ten at allowing teams to get into the backfield, and the defensive front was the 4th worst in the conference at generating tackles for loss. The defense was great, and the offense got the job done most of the time, but if the lines can be a major plus with its relatively light schedule, Washington becomes a player. Biggest concern: forced takeaways when desperately needed. More often than not, the defense turned it up a few notches in the blowouts, with 14 of the 19 takeaways coming in total wipeouts. In the losses to Oregon, Michigan, and Wisconsin, when the offense was struggling and a few big defensive plays would have mattered, there were a grand total of 0 takeaways. The season prediction: I was beating the drum throughout last season that Washington was deep in the hunt to make the college football playoff, but it all flamed out in a spectacular fashion. The Huskies lost to Ohio State, but they played well in a perfectly acceptable 24-6 loss. Even after losing to Michigan, the great performance against Illinois set everything up with a breather of a run before the Big Ten finale at home against Oregon. And then the Dogs didn't even get on the plane for Madison in a strange 13-10 loss. This year's team has a lot of work to do, but if it owns Seattle and doesn't have another Wisconsin moment, it'll be in the thick of things until the end. No, there's not enough in place to win the Big Ten title, but that's okay. Get to 10-2 and it'll be in the college football playoff. There's no Ohio State, Michigan, Illinois, or Wisconsin. 5 of the first 6 games are at home before going to Purdue. And then with a week off to get ready for Nebraska. Indiana, Iowa, Minnesota, and Penn State are all in Husky Stadium also. So there's just not enough to get there. Between the road games at Oregon, USC, and Nebraska, and the home games against the Hoosiers and Nittany Lions, there will be more than 2 losses. But the program really is getting better under Fisch. Don't forget about this team. This team is right there. Truly it is. My prediction for the record is 8-4, but I could really see them getting to 9 or 10. The over-under is 7.5, so obviously that is an over. So now we move on to number 2, the top 8 of this Mammoth Conference. Number 8, a team I struggled with and I'm just being honest with you. I struggled with this team more because quite honestly, I think I have them flipped. I think I should have done Washington. I think I should have done this next team where I did Washington, and Washington should be ahead of them. But there is a little bit more depth returning to this team, so that's why I put them here. But I don't know. I up literally to this second, I'm still questioning it. Number 8's Nebraska. Went 7-6 last year after all the preseason hype about Matt Rhule in year number 3 at his previous coaching stops. He now has Nebraska winning again. Kinda. That's not enough, though, for a school that should be a player on the national scale. The Cornhuskers offense scored 28.7 points per game and gained 370.5 yards per game. The Cornhuskers defense allowed 24.6 points per game and 329.5 yards per game. Not exactly the black shirt defense. Best case, worst case. Win 9 games for the first time since 2016. Worst case, an 8th losing season in 10 years. Take yourself back to your 2016 self and say to yourself, 10 years from now, you'll be on the cusp of seeing Nebraska have losing seasons for the 8th time in 10 years. Unreal. Stats for 2025. Sacks, opponents, 33 for 219 yards. Nebraska, 22 for 169. 2, passing yards allowed. Opponents, 224.6 per game. Nebraska, 154.1 per game. 3, punt return average. Nebraska, 13.6. Opponents, 3.8. The Cornhuskers 2026 unit rankings. Coaching staff, 8th. Depth of roster, 9. Offense, 9. Defense, 7. Quarterback, 10. Running back, 16. Wide receiver, tight ends, 5. Offensive line, 8. Defensive line, 8. Linebacker, 8. Secondary, 5. Specials, 7. Nebraska fans are among the best in the country. They're crazy mad for their teams, in a good way, also supportive, and for the most part, anecdotally, they're eternally hopeful that this can all pivot back to the greatness in a hurry. But you'll have to forgive them for being beyond ready for something special after going 9 straight seasons without more than 7 victories, and with a 26-54 record in the Big Ten in that span. It's Nebraska. It's supposed to be good at this. Matt Rhule must make the Cornhuskers special again. Matt Rhule got Nebraska back to winning seasons and bowl games, but that's the bare minimum. He was a big hire in 2023, specifically brought in as a big name, big respect coach who was going to restore the glory days at one of the proudest and greatest college football programs in the sport's history. He's 19-19 in 3 seasons in Lincoln, 10-17 in the Big Ten, and 66-62 overall as a college head coach. Nebraska needs Matt Rhule to start winning more football games. How is the offense not blowing up with Dana Holgorsen as the offensive coordinator? His attack only averaged 370 yards and 28.7 points per game. The ground game wasn't great, and the overall pop just wasn't there. It's all about the transfer portal to try to making things better fast. So what's working? It's not a high bar to hit. Last year's Nebraska team went 5-0 when pushing past just 352 yards per game. By the way, averaging 352 per game would have made you 95th in the nation in total offense last year. The Huskers went 2-6 when they didn't blow past the 350-yard mark. There's no excuse not to do that every game out. There just isn't. There's a lot to like with the receiving corps. Getting Quasi Gilmore from UCLA was great. Ja'Cory Barner is a nice mid-range pass catcher who caught 45 passes, and Nazi Hunter is a good one who finished 3rd on the team with 43 grabs. Tight end Luke Lindenmeyer has to be used more after a 29-catch season. The running backs will be fine even without Emmett. the Kansas City Chiefs got Emmett Johnson. He'll be a part of your fantasy football life for the next few years. After his 1,451-yard, 12-touchdown season, along with 46 catches for 370 yards and 3 scores. What needs work? The quarterback situation. Dylan Raiola did what he could, hitting 72% of his passes with 18 touchdowns and just 6 interceptions last year before getting hurt. And now he's at Oregon. Raiola was supposed to be the centerpiece of the rebuild to greatness. TJ Lateef did a nice job in relief, but he's not quite the passer and playmaker that UNLV's Anthony Colandrea is. Neither one is Raiola talent-wise. The offensive line has to be better. As someone of a certain age, the idea of Nebraska not having a dominant force of a front five doesn't seem or feel right. Now this bunch has to be better than 115th in the nation in sacks allowed. There's experience returning with Justin Evans at center, Elijah Pritchard at left tackle, and on the way is a potential star in Trey Babbely from South Carolina for the right tackle gig. And Brendan Block from Iowa State and Paul Mugina at the guard gigs. Just scored. To continue to live in the past. The historic 1995 Husker team never scored fewer than 35 points. Last year's team scored fewer than 35 points 10 times. Nebraska was 6-0 when scoring 28 or more, 1-6 when it didn't. On the defensive side of the ball, it comes to this. San Diego State's defense turned into a powerhouse last year under Rob Urich, and Nebraska made him its new defensive coordinator. Last year's Huskers defense wasn't bad. There was a few odd moments. Seriously, who gives up 40 points to Iowa? But it was a positive to build on with all the good new parts coming in. So what's working? San Diego State. Seriously, the Aztec defense turned into a brick wall, helped by a front line that made a big deal out of getting to the quarterback. It finished 11th in the nation under Urich, and it was only that low because all the good parts left before the bowl game shootout with North Texas that screwed up the stats. It also helped to bring along linebacker Owen Chambliss and safety Dwayne McGoogle. Those two are instant playmakers. The linebackers will dominate. Chambliss does a little bit of everything on the outside. And Vincent Shavers is back after making 61 stops and 7.5 tackles for loss in the middle. That 40-point, to say the least, it was crazy. What needs work? Red zone defense. It's one thing to give up points when teams get inside the 20. Fine. Long drive, hold up, give up the field goal, move on. But Nebraska's defense was miserable when it came to keeping teams out of the end zone. The Huskers were dead last in the nation in red zone defense touchdown percentage. For example, Ohio State allowed teams to score touchdowns just 37% of the time in the red zone. Nebraska's defense was I lost my place. Pass rush. Nebraska allowed teams to score 6 on 79% of their trips. I didn't even know that number was even possible. The pass rush has to show up. The Huskers didn't have anyone who could get to the quarterback last year. Projected starting Husker ends Cameron Linhart and Williams Norani combined for 4.5 sacks last year, and they were the best of the bunch. That's one part of Urich's defense that he didn't bring from San Diego State, the killers on the edge. San Diego State University stars Trey White ended up at Texas Tech, and Ryan Henderson went to Texas A&M. The run defense has to be better. The Huskers lost when they were shoved going 1-6, allowing more than 175 rushing yards, and 6-0 when they didn't. Worse yet, they allowed 4.8 yards per carry on the year. So keys to the season. Number 1, find something on either side of the ball that opposing teams have to worry about. Number 2, get even more production at quarterback, especially down the field. Number 3, both lines have to hold up better. Better pass protection on one side, more against the run on the other. Biggest concern, beating the good teams. In 3 seasons under Rule, Nebraska has beaten 2 teams that finished a season with more than 7 wins. 2024 Colorado and 2023 Northwestern. Over those three seasons against Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, USC, and Indiana, the Huskers are 0-10. So here's the season prediction. Again, here's sort of the problem. The last time Nebraska beat Ohio State was 2011, and it took the Luke Fickell pre-Urban year to do it. The Buckeyes are on the schedule. The last time Nebraska played Indiana was 2 years ago, and Kirk Connecticut's bunch won 56-7. The Hoosiers are on the schedule. Rule is 0-3 against Iowa, and it's on the schedule. Oregon is on the schedule and is as dangerous Washington team as is Illinois. There's a real shot of starting 5-0 with Ohio, Bowling Green, North Dakota, at Michigan State, and Maryland to start. And then, Indiana, at Oregon, Washington, at Illinois, at Rutgers, Ohio State, at Iowa. Rules teams play hard. Effort isn't the issue. They don't get hit with penalties. Not an issue. They don't turn the ball over. Not the issue. And the coverage teams are great. Again, not the issue. They're just not good enough. College football is better when Nebraska is good, but I have the Cornhuskers going a disappointing 7-5. The over-under is 6.5, so that's barely an over, but it's an over. Something tells me this could be one that I'll be getting wrong, but now on to our final breakdown of this episode. Yeah, oof, what a schedule's correct, and let's just say it's about the 4th or 5th hardest schedule in the Big Ten. Moving on from this point, moving forward after my next breakdown, the schedules are insane. They did the top 6 of this conference that I get into next week that we'll run into. They did none of those teams any favors. None of them. In a doomsday scenario for the Big Ten, it wouldn't surprise me at all if somebody that I've already talked about wins the Big Ten. And when next week at this time at 5:30, you'll know why. Because the schedules for the top 6 it's ridiculous, if you really want my honest opinion. But we'll get into that next week. Number 7, Penn State. Last year went 7-6. Happy Valley has turned into Ames, Iowa. What do I mean? Matt Campbell was hired from Iowa State, and he brought in 24 of his players from the Cyclones. That's 24 players who know Campbell, the system, and how they want to do things. I've been a huge Matt Campbell guy for quite some time. The question was then and is now, can Matt Campbell win big games? The Nittany Lions have the schedule, the roster, and the new head coach who has just one job, win and win now. The Nittany Lions offense scored 31.2 points per game and gained 362 yards per game. The Nittany Lions defense allowed 20.5 points per game and allowed 326.8 yards per game. Probably the most disappointing thing of last season. That defense was supposed to be nasty. It was supposed to be, quite honestly, everything Ohio State's defense was supposed to be. That was supposed to be Penn State's defense. And it just wasn't all season long. Best case, worst case. Best, win the Big Ten and make a deep college football playoff run. Worst, a mid-level Big Ten finish and average bowl game. 2025 key stats. 1, rushing touchdowns. Penn State 30, opponent 16. 2, sacks. Penn State 32 for 211 yards, opponents 19 for 129 yards. 3, blocked kicks. Penn State 5, opponents 1. So one would ask, how the heck did they lose? Well, we all know why. Quarterback, offensive line, and defense. 2026 unit rankings, coaching staff 14th, depth of roster 6th, offense 6, defense 5, quarterback 8, running back 5, wide receiver tight end 10, offensive line 9, defensive line 8, linebacker 3, secondary 7, special teams 6. Penn State hired Matt Campbell to be the head coach to take the program to that one extra level that James Franklin couldn't. But is the former Iowa State head man the one who's going to push the program past Ohio State, Indiana, Oregon, and Michigan, and USC to be the star of the Big Ten? And that leads to be the thing that ultimately become the reason why Franklin is now the head coach at Virginia Tech. It was Franklin's anchor that his teams had problems against the top 10 powerhouses. Getting the Nittany Lions to the 2024 season college football playoff semifinals basically bought him a fat load of jack squat when it came to national respect. But he won a whole lot of games against everyone else. Campbell won a whole lot of games at Iowa State, averaging over 7 wins a season at a place not used to being a steady winner. But he won just 2 bowl games. One was the 2024 Pop-Tarts thing that, thanks to Miami star quarterback Cam Ward tapping out at halftime, this could absolutely work, and right away. Penn State has a good group of players in place. Plenty of stars left, but enough are still around to provide a solid base. At a whopping 24 players from Iowa State, Campbell did win 19 games over the last 2 years, and other good players through the portal came in as well. Take that and then mix in a dreamy schedule. Wait until the end. You won't believe who Penn State doesn't have to play, and this is that sleeper, not a sleeper because it's a Penn State team to watch out for. If Campbell and Penn State win the big games, will Penn State's offense be more explosive? Taylor Mauser was Campbell's offensive coordinator of the last few years, and his Penn State offense has to be far more explosive and consistent than his Cyclones attack was last season. There might not be a ton of returning starters, but the transfers coming in are fantastic, and there's a chance to hit the ground running if everyone can stay healthy. So what's working? The quarterback situation. Drew Aller was a bit better than he ever got credit for. Not really, but he got hurt halfway through the season. Now he's a Pittsburgh Steeler, and backup Ethan Grunkemeyer is Franklin's quarterback at Virginia Tech. Rocco Beck played for Campbell over the last 4 years and leaves Ames with over 9,200 yards passing and 64 touchdowns with 19 scoring runs. Beck's backup, Alex Mansky, is coming along too. The running backs might not be quite as talented as the combination of Caton Allen and Nicholas Singleton, but there's no complaining about the 1-2 punch of bruising back Carson Hansen from Iowa State and James Peoples from Ohio State to go along with last year's third leading running back, Quentin Martin. There's a lot of love at wide receiver. Chase Sowell and Brett Eagleston, both from Iowa State, are elite deep threats who will be instant factors. They're not alone, with 3 more receivers coming in. Kobe Howard still around, averaging 19 yards per grab last season on his 7 catches. So what needs work? The offensive line will be the biggest concern in fall camp. Losing Drew Shelton to the Dallas Cowboys, Ologove Loane to the Baltimore Ravens isn't a plus. There's talent, including guard Trevor Burr from Iowa State and center Brock Riker from Texas Tech. But the tackle situation is thin. Anthony Donka will probably move from guard to the outside, and Malachi Goodman has the 6'6", 330-pound size, along with the talent to grow into the gig. Mauser's offenses were fine, but they weren't a killer. Iowa State finished 9th in the Big 12 in total offense in each of the last 2 seasons. They come up with more yards than Penn State's did last year, but the competition is about to go up several notches. The running game has to rock. Penn State had NFL caliber backs working behind a line with a few elite talents, and when it worked, it worked. The Nittany Lions were 5-0, were running for 200 yards or more, and the only team they beat in the regular season when they didn't hit that mark was Nevada. Iowa State averaged 174 rushing yards per game. Can the defense stay to the Penn State standard playing the 3-3-5? After doing a good job ramping up the USC defense over the last few seasons, D'Anton Lynn comes in to take over the Penn State D. What's working? It's Penn State. It always has great linebackers. Tony Rojas is back after missing a big chunk of last season, but he was a force in 2024 with 58 stops and 3 picks. He's joined by the Iowa State tandem of Cooper Evil and Caleb Bacon for the inside. Those two combined for 145 tackles with 17.5 tackles for loss. The secondary will be sneaky good right away. The corner combination of Adavian Collins and Darius Dixon is still around, and safety Zion Tracy should do more with a bigger role. Iowa State safety transfers Marcus Neal Jr., Jeremiah Cooper, and Jamison Payton are elite stat sheet fillers. Over the last few years, Lynn's defenses have been great in the red zone. This saved the USCD, allowing teams to score just 76% of the time when they got inside the 20-yard line. His Nittany Lion defense should also be great at not breaking after bending. What needs to work? Penn State lost some amazing players on the defensive front. In all, it lost 12 linemen in the portal and a few others in the NFL draft. The transfer portal helped bring some decent options in, but Danny Dennis Sutton is gone to the Green Bay Packers, and tackle Zane Durant is a Buffalo Bill. No, really, Penn State lost some amazing players on the defensive front. Chaz Coleman and Xavier Gilman, both to Tennessee, but it didn't work medically for Coleman, were two of the top players in the portal. Last year at this time, they were expected to be the future foundation for the Penn State defensive line. In Zurich Fisher from USC and tackle Zali Tuapaki from UCLA are great transfer prospects who would have found big roles right away. Stop teams from completing passes. It sounds simple, but it was a problem. Penn State went 5-0 when allowing teams to convert fewer than 60% of their passes, and 2-5, and they had a nightmare of time to win in wins over Rutgers. When opposing quarterbacks were even reasonably accurate, how big is this? Since 2022, Penn State is 30-0 when the opposing passing game doesn't complete 60% of its passes. Keys to the season. Number one, how fast can all the Iowa State players fit in with what's in place? Number two, both lines have to be up to normal Penn State standards by the time Big Ten season starts. And number three, keep the interceptions down. This was a problem last year, and Cyclones transfer Rocco Beck has thrown 26 over the last 3 seasons. So biggest concern, how will everyone handle the expectations? Oh, sure, it'll be easy to say all the right things about how Campbell needs a year or so to get all the pieces in place to make Penn State a true national championship player. However, Marshall at Temple, Buffalo, Wisconsin at Northwestern. That's the start to the season, and the hype will build if and when the Nittany Lions probably go 5-0. The truly dangerous games will soon kick in, but the spotlight will be bright for USC and then Michigan. Biggest game at Michigan, October 17th. The Big Ten opener against Wisconsin won't be a breeze. Appearances will be okay with Penn State's relatively favorable schedule. The season prediction. What would have happened if Penn State came up with a late 4th down stop against Oregon? It's been memory dumped, but Penn State was number 3 and had the Ducks beaten, but it couldn't come up with a late stop and lost in double overtime. It lost the next 3 games by a heartbreaking total of 7 points. Last year, Penn State lost to Indiana, Ohio State, Oregon, Iowa, and UCLA, who's way better this year, and none of those 5 are on the 2026 schedule. Missing Illinois and Nebraska isn't bad either. Like I said, Marshall at Temple, Buffalo, that's Penn State's non-conference schedule. Wisconsin and Minnesota are dangerous this year, but those have to be winnable home games. And there can't be any sort of a blink against Purdue or Rutgers. Campbell has to win all of the games Penn State will be favored in. And then it's all about USC, at Michigan, at Washington. With this schedule, it's just this easy. Win the big games, go to the college football playoff. Lose, and it's go back to the drawing board, only without all your transfers and a rabid fan base looking at you as, are you the real hire or not? So good luck. I have Penn State going 9-3. The over-under is 9.5. So we end this week with an under. So finally, that's a wrap of the middle of the Big Ten. 6 teams that could make or break the depth of the conference landscape coming this fall. Thanks for riding along with me today and this evening. If you enjoyed this week's breakdown, hit the subscribe button, pound the likes, leave a review, and share it with your conference diehard buddies. Obviously, I'll catch you next week for the top 6. I already gave a little bit of a preview. Like I said, those schedules for the top 6, they're not something to write home about. Those schedules are insane, especially for I know 2 of the top teams. They'll remain nameless right now, but arguably 2 of the hardest schedules ever in those 2 teams' histories. That's something to ponder over. I don't know what I'm going to do for the before breakdown. Might go into a little bit of season predictions for the whole nation, or might actually even go into the Save College Sports Act too. I haven't figured out which one I want to do. But be sure, come back next week, probably about the same time, 4:15, somewhere in there. So until next week, thanks Ian, thanks Matt, thanks everybody that joined in. You guys are great always. Until next week, when we talk about the top of the Big Ten, God bless and always peace.